So while we talk about Nintendo at length here on this channel, one other company that I have essentially an equal level of nostalgia for is none other than Sega, and they are back in the news for a few different reasons, and I want to walk through them with you all today because we have some talks from the Sega boss himself around some of their challenges and thought processes around potential mini consoles that could still be in the works to come back, but they're definitely having their fair share of difficulties with doing so. Also, we have direct comments around what they're planning to do with the future of Sonic and potential reboots and remakes throughout, amongst us looking forward to games like Sonic Superstars. And finally, there are leaks circulating around online with Sega suggesting that some fan-beloved franchises may be in the works to make a big return sometime soon, and we need to get on the same page with all of these details right now. What's up, nation? Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification if you haven't already. And as mentioned, guys, today we are discussing a company that is near and dear to my heart and some of the future plans they may have for things like mini consoles. And we will start there because I will tell you that I do have a bias towards wanting to see these things come back. I am a game collector at the end of the day. I am somebody that in the era of digital games, I always try to pick up physical whenever possible, especially for systems like the Nintendo Switch and even my PlayStation 5. There's no denying that we'll be going all digital one day, but I do think that while it's still here, that is a path that I will continue to want to pick up my merchandise, and things like a mini console is a really great way to go down memory lane and see what the console actually looked like, but in a smaller form factor. And of course, you have modern HDMI ports, so if you do want to have that authentic experience, you get the system controller, and you don't have to hassle to go find old AV cables or some kind of converter to hook it up to a modern day TV. And while you're not popping the classic cartridges in and out of the system, you do have a large collection of all of the games that are most iconic for that era. And recently, this has come up in an interview with the Sega boss himself around some iconic systems like the Saturn and the Dreamcast. As you can see, the following article posted up over on VGC that reads, "Sega Saturn is difficult to turn into a mini console, says Sega boss. Sega has released 2 mini Mega Drives so far." Speaking to Famitsu, translated by VGC, the Sega boss said, "The Sega Saturn is surprisingly high performance, so the difficulty of miniaturization is also high. I don't think it's a case of let's make another one because it sells well. It looks like it's going to be a little longer. I'd like to think about it when we're in a situation where we can openly develop it together with people that have always loved the Sega Saturn and Dreamcast." Performance-wise, while not a perfect comparison, the Sega Saturn was released in the same console generation as the Sony PlayStation and Nintendo 64. While Sony has released a classic PlayStation console, Nintendo has yet to continue the trend it popularized of releasing miniature consoles. If it was to do so, the Nintendo 64 would presumably be next. In June of last year, Sega's classic hardware producer Yosuke Okanari said that he had considered producing mini versions of classic consoles, but claimed that the cost of producing parts for either a Dreamcast or Saturn would be prohibitively expensive. So here's the deal. By no means does this confirm that we can somehow get a Saturn Mini or Dreamcast Mini. It's actually quite the opposite. It's Sega venting about how it's difficult to bring these consoles back to market, but I do like to see them thinking about the prospect of it because I think they know that there is a large audience out there that wants to play these games in modern resolutions with modern HDMI technology and on the classic controller and classic hardware that we know and love and have nostalgia for, and I believe they see it as a profitable route to put some of these timeless classics back in front of their fans. And I do think that they will one day, when figuring out the cost of parts and getting things brought down in terms of production dollars, we may see these consoles ultimately hit the market. When you talk about Nintendo and them spearheading this mini console trend with things like the NES Mini and the SNES Mini, and then other companies followed suit, it was really an interesting time for Nintendo because they were by no means a market leader at that point. They had a successful handheld console, but they were failing miserably with the Wii U in terms of market penetration, and I feel like they did that out of necessity to bring some more revenue to their bottom line when it comes to hardware production, and that's why we just mysteriously saw them stop the trend with the N64, but there's no reason why Nintendo might not want to continue this trend. Sega could absolutely double down on the rest of their classic libraries from the Saturn and the Dreamcast and bring them to market because Sega's not in the hardware game anymore, as you probably know. They are developing plenty of games, but not focusing on the hardware side anymore. And that's actually a perfect segue to the next part of this Sega conversation that we're having, because there's no doubt that one franchise absolutely receives more love than any other in Sega's library, and that's of course none other than Sonic the Hedgehog. The blue blur that once went head-to-head with Mario in popularity has seen a lot of love over recent years, most recently with things like Sonic Superstars, which is really the 2D evolution of future Sonic games, which is great to hear. They're bringing in 4-player co-op. It's essentially Sonic the Hedgehog 4, but not that silly episodic release thing that they tried to do years back, but rather just the modern enhancements and modern visuals with classical 2D, 2.5D style Sonic gameplay, and I love to see this game in the holster. Before that, we had Sonic's big evolution into 3D with Sonic Frontiers, that while it did feel like a first step into that new 3D direction, I definitely think that game did a lot right, and I'm excited to see where the future of 3D Sonic goes from here as well. But Sega indeed does have even more plans for Sonic, as you can see this next article over on VGC as well, which reads, Sega president says it's considering more Sonic remakes and reboots. The newest Sonic title, Sonic Superstars, will release in October. Speaking to Famitsu, translated by VGC, the Sega boss said that while reboots and remakes don't work with all of Sega's properties, it is focusing on what is best for each IP. In the case of Sonic, this could mean more remakes and reboots. Of course, we have to do new things, but not all IPs are the same for new releases and reboots, Sugino said. For each IP, we will choose which method is appropriate at this time. Sonic is Sega's flagship IP, and we are considering reboots and remakes for it in parallel with new titles. So while we've seen most all of the classic Sonic games from the Sega Genesis era brought back and easily playable on modern consoles, most recently with Sonic Origins, we've also seen that collection kind of re-released throughout the years on numerous consoles, and I think that it is time for Sega to look at potentially a reboot for a game like Sonic Adventure, or just come out with a sequel in the series. But I do think it might make more sense to go back to Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 and do a fresh reboot or remake of those classic beloved games, bring them into the modern era, streamline the controls, streamline the physics, and give us those classic experiences once again, and then follow it up with a true Sonic Adventure 3. I think that could be a huge win for Sonic fans, and if they can somehow pull that off alongside of developing whatever this vision for Frontiers is, as we've heard the Sonic team say that that's the vision for Sonic games for the next 10 years, I think that that makes a ton of sense to do these games alongside of each other, give the Sonic Frontiers push the development time that it needs to go into that massive open world, open zone type of 3D gameplay, and then give us a more traditional, old school Sonic Adventures game while you are developing that broader vision. So it's obviously a great time to be a Sonic fan still to this day, and this last piece of news actually has to do with a couple more niche franchises, one of which I would be very excited to see make a return. As you can see, the following post that reads, Leaker claims Sega bringing back Altered Beast and the Gunstar Heroes franchises. Video game leaker Shipshell Nick has said on the latest edition of the Xbox Era podcast that Sega is planning to bring back a couple of older beloved franchises. Speaking on the podcast, he claimed that Sega is planning to bring back both the Altered Beast series and the Gunstar Heroes franchise, both of which were on the popular Sega Mega Drive system. Sega has previously said that they are looking to delve into their back catalog, and today Forever Entertainment teased that they have a new remake project in the works. If anything transpires, then we will let you all know. So while I don't have any level of nostalgia for Altered Beast, I do have a ton of nostalgia for Gunstar Heroes, because when you talk about an excellent game to sit down and go through with a buddy through couch co-op, I mean, that's exactly what I did as a kid for countless hours. They had such unique boss fights. It looked amazing. If you brought that back with some more modern visuals, I think it would be great. I know we did see, I think, Super Gunstar Heroes on the Game Boy Advance, if I'm not mistaken. I never spent any time in that particular game, but the Genesis with this release, not to mention you can experience this today on Nintendo Switch Online, I still think holds up as a great side-scrolling action adventure platforming shooter. Really cool weapon combinations where you have to choose if you want something that's more focused on homing or just up close damage, and you can mix and match different power-ups throughout. I think that this would be a fantastic series to bring back, a franchise that maybe doesn't have the same kind of legs today to stand on from a sales perspective, but if given the right type of love and care, I still think could be mildly successful. Is it going to do Sonic numbers? Absolutely not, but I would love to see it happen, and I know there's a ton of Altered Beast fans out there, so I think that Sega delving into their back catalog makes a lot of sense, and we have multiple fronts that this could happen on in the form of mini consoles, Sonic reboots, remakes, and sequels, and even some long forgotten about franchises from Sega. So I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, your personal thoughts and opinions on all the things happening with Sega right now. Are you like me and you are actually pumped to hear some of this stuff? Could you not care less and you really think that Sega should just move on to newer and better things and not focus on really anything to do with the past? And if you had to pick just a few games from Sega's back catalog that you would love to see brought back, whether it be through a reboot, remake, or even in the form playable on a modern mini console, what would they be? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.